Very good to be with you this afternoon. It is a public holiday, and one is very appreciative of the fact, and that's one thing that I absolutely love about South Africans. We like to engage, we like to think about things. I think we're politically quite a sophisticated bunch, and it's great to see you here on Women's Day, wanting to engage with this very important question that we are tackling today, and that is patriarchy. And as part of the broader struggle for social justice, so the struggle against patriarchy and where it fits into our idea of the struggle against oppression generally, against discrimination, exclusion, marginalisation, and so forth, and towards the advancement of social justice. So I thought I'd give us a little bit of context so that we have a bit of a background to this conversation. For me, what stands out is that if we look at the history of South Africa in the 20th century, it's very much the history of contending nationalisms. So you have you have Afrikaner nationalism, you have African nationalism. Both those nationalisms were actually wrought in reaction to British nationalism, as it is articulated through British imperialism, or as it was at that time. So both of these contending nationalisms that basically dominated our politics for most of the 20th century are, to my mind, central to how we understand gender relations, and patriarchy. Because these nationalisms frame what is called the national question in a very particular kind of way. And if we look at that framing of the national question, we frequently see that race is foregrounded while gender is not. And the reason for that would be, part of that reason would be the way that nationalism actually understands, or the nationalism in this context, how they made sense of the struggles that we were fighting in this space. So if we also, for people who hopefully read the blurb, we specifically refer there to the grand narratives that foreground big men, to the expense of women. And what's interesting to note for me is, of course, that these big men themselves were also involved in the production of certain narratives that put women in a very particular kind of light. So, and I'm particularly thinking now of someone like Dr. A.B. Kuma, who in the 1930s, after the death of Charlotte Maxeke, he referred to her, to my mind, in quite patronizing terms. And he basically said about her, she was a patient and loving mother who rekindled the flame of liberation. If we look at Maxeke, and what she actually managed to achieve, she was the first African woman to get a BSc degree, which she did in the United States of America in 1901. She was part of the women who resisted the extension of the pass laws to black women in 1913, and these women marched actually to police stations and magistrates' courts and burned their passes in front of the police, and actually came into direct battle with the police force of that time. Charlotte Maxeke herself is a founding member of the Bantu Women's League, which was founded in 1918. And it was in direct reaction to the fact that the South African National Native Congress at the time did not allow women as full members. It allowed women at a certain point as auxiliary members, but the only way that you could achieve that auxiliary membership, and you can hear, of course, auxiliary member, the only way that you could achieve that was if you were married to a man who was an ANC member. So you can see the heteronormativity in there, running very strongly. Now fast forward to 2010, and we look at something like Angie Motshekga, the former president of the ANC Women's League, and she delivered the Charlotte Maxeke Memorial Lecture that year. And it was very interesting how she described ANC women in relation to ANC men. And again, the description was very much of the heteronormative variety. So she was saying, we are your gentle and loving sisters. We are your caring and selfless mothers. Gentle and loving, caring and selfless, and your dearest wives and partners. And again, these then this is the kind of model of womanhood that's then presented as the most revered way of being a woman in African nationalism. It determines, it in a sense sets down the rules of what kind of woman do we want to participate in African nationalism, what kind of woman do we want in the ANC. And very particularly of importance here is the fact that it's always in relation to men. So women always in relation women in relation to a man, and in no way as approached in an independent capacity as a human being in her own right. And then so it's that relationality with men which is very important in terms of the kind of woman we want. It's a woman who lives and who's attached to a man. And then also, of course, the articulation through motherhood. The whole thing of the preferred ideal woman is a mother, and she's got the characteristics of a mother. So that association with motherhood then becomes very important. So this is the kind of woman that we want. Now, if you look at Afrikaner nationalism, pretty much the same kind of constructions, also around the so-called volksmoeder, which is the mother of the nation. So again, that the motherhood being foregrounded. But of course, Afrikaner nationalism, as we know, is a racist ideology. And what it wanted to do was to also create a kind of a regulation and a disciplining of Afrikaners, within the fold. And part of that thing was to stop any kind of dissidence. So in terms of then stopping and excluding Afrikaner dissidents, it was very important then to also regulate Afrikaner women according to a very particular model of womanhood. So if we think, I don't know if anybody in this audience actually heard of the Garment Workers Union, for example. Here you had a bunch of women in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s who, in the beginning stages of that trade union, was an interracial union which adhered to socialist principles, and you had it was led by Afrikaner women. So that's, of course, that, later on they became entrapped also in the Afrikaner nationalist racist idea, but in the beginning, there was a different political possibility there. I myself am researching another figure who in a day was an anti-fascist, a socialist, a feminist, and so forth, and also wrote against racism, an Afrikaner woman, yet again, the first woman to become a gynecologist in South Africa, totally written out of history. So you see, yet again, who gets foregrounded, and then the question is, how do they get foregrounded? If they get included, how do they get included? Charlotte Macleke is included, but in very particular terms. That tells us, if you want to be included as a woman in this nationalism, these are the rules that you have to follow.